She said it so casually I almost missed it. He's just a co-parent now. I was walking past the office, arms full of dry laundry, when I heard it. No hesitation in her voice. No bitterness either. Just calm certainty. As if it had already been true for a while, and she was simply repeating it for clarity. I stopped. Not dramatically, just enough to listen. Through the cracked door, I could see the back of her head, one leg crossed over the other, pen tapping against her notepad. She chuckled at whatever came next from the other end of the call. Her tone was warm. Relaxed. She leaned forward, said something too low to catch, then sat back and laughed again. That laugh used to be mine. I stood there in the hallway for 10, maybe 15 seconds, staring at the wood grain in the doorframe. My pulse didn't spike. My hands didn't shake. I didn't feel heat rise up my neck the way it had the few times we'd fought. This wasn't a moment of rage. It was clarity. Cold and quiet. Like the first gust of wind before a storm rolls in. She's just venting, part of me offered. Saying what she has to say to sound independent. But that wasn't what I'd heard. That wasn't frustration. That was framing. She wasn't talking about me with resentment. She was packaging me. Defining me to someone else in a way that made room for something new. She'd found a label that let her rewrite the script without needing a villain. He's just a co-parent. Not a partner. Not a teammate. Just the father of her son and the guy who unloads the dishwasher. There was no anger in it. And that was what made it stick. I kept walking. Didn't stop. Didn't pause again. I dropped the laundry on the bed and folded it with mechanical precision, shirt after shirt, sock after sock, mine somewhere else entirely. That night, after our usual dinner, chicken, roasted vegetables, polite conversation about weekend errands, she kissed me goodnight and turned over with a soft sigh. Like we were fine. Like nothing had shifted. After her breathing evened out, I slipped out of bed, opened the drawer on her side, and pulled out the bundle she kept tied with a silver ribbon. Notes and cards from birthdays, anniversaries, little hand-scribbled thank yous we used to leave for each other on bad days. I found the one from her 32nd, the year we hosted her parents in the backyard and I made that terrible chocolate souffle that collapsed in the oven. I'd forgotten what she wrote in the card until I saw it again. You're not just my partner, you're my safe place. My calm in the noise. I love this life because I share it with you. That was 3 years ago. Her handwriting was softer then, bigger loops, a little rushed. She'd written it in the kitchen while I was outside hanging lights, and I remember her sliding it under my plate at breakfast like it was a secret. I stared at that word again, safe. It hit differently now. At the time, I'd taken it as a compliment. Now it felt like a precursor. Safe becomes predictable. Predictable becomes invisible. And invisible men get reclassified without notice. I put the card back, tied the ribbon the same way I found it, closed the drawer softly and sat on the edge of the bed until the first light started to press against the blinds. She didn't know I'd heard her. And I didn't plan to tell her. Because that sentence, "He's just a co-parent now," wasn't a slip. It was a signal. A statement meant for someone who mattered to her. Someone she wanted to reassure. Someone who had asked where I stood. I knew better than to panic. Whatever this was, I wasn't going to scare it deeper into hiding. That's what a confrontation would do, force it underground, make her careful. And I needed her to stay exactly as she was. So I made a decision, right there in the dark. No confrontation. No accusations. Just quiet observation. From that moment forward, I stopped assuming we were on the same team. And I started watching. I didn't touch her phone. Not because I was noble, and not because I trusted her. It was tactical. If she was careless enough to say what she said, then she might be careless in other ways. I didn't need tech. I needed patterns. So I bought a small, spiral-bound notebook, the kind you could slip in your pocket without drawing attention, and I started documenting her schedule. Old school. No GPS, no apps, no cloud hacks, just observations. Monday. Home by 6:40. Said meeting ran late. Showered immediately. No gym clothes. Tuesday. Left at 8:15. Back at 5:20. Grocery bags in hand. Nothing out of place. Wednesday. Said she was grabbing drinks with coworkers. Came home at 9:30. Slightly dressed up. Perfume was fresh. No receipt in purse. It wasn't just about where she was. It was about what changed. 3 weeks in, I noticed the first anomaly. A dry cleaning receipt left on the kitchen counter, tucked under a takeout menu. I wouldn't have noticed it, except I was cleaning up after dinner. The total was for one blazer, men's sizing, 2 sizes too large for me. I don't wear blazers. She doesn't shop for her brother. The clerk had circled. Ready by Thursday. That night, while she washed her face, I asked casually if she'd bought something new. She didn't flinch. Oh no. That was for Dana's husband. She asked if I could return it on my way home. Wrong size or something. Dana hadn't been mentioned in months. I smiled. Got it. The next morning, I tore off a new page and wrote, blazer, size 44R. Not mine, claimed return for friend's husband, unverified. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was the first drop in the bucket. I started paying closer attention to her speech. She used to talk about things we were building, a garden in the spring, a road trip out west, maybe renting a cabin in the fall. Lately, it was different. New phrases crept into her vocabulary like rehearsed lines. Personal autonomy, emotional compatibility, self-actualization. They sounded like fragments from a podcast, words designed to justify a break without sounding cruel. I knew them for what they were, linguistic cushioning. There were physical changes too. She used to leave her phone plugged in next to mine on the nightstand. Now it stayed in the office, always screen down. She claimed it was to avoid distractions before bed. I didn't argue. She started locking her car. Every time. Even when just grabbing something from inside the house. I once watched from the kitchen window as she double-checked the lock with her thumb, looked around, then walked up the path like nothing happened. I noted everything. There were showers after work meetings now. Not workouts. Not dirty errands. Just short, purposeful showers at odd hours, with no visible reason for them. Once, after a supposed trip to the grocery store, she came home flushed and immediately disappeared into the bathroom. I checked the car later. 2 bags in the back seat, both empty. No groceries inside. The more I observed, the less I recognized. Not because she changed completely, but because I started seeing the edits. The tiny revisions to routines, the casual omissions in her stories. The way she'd ask about my day without ever listening to the answer. The hardest part was pretending everything was fine. Smiling through dinner. Laughing at her jokes. Letting her lean on me during movies, while my mind ran calculations in the background. But I had to. If I confronted too early, I'd lose visibility. She'd retreat, hide, become cautious. But as long as I played the part, she'd keep underestimating me. And I needed her blind. Because somewhere in this shifting behavior was a truth I wasn't supposed to see. And I wasn't just going to see it. I was going to understand it, then dismantle it. Piece by piece. It was a napkin that cracked the surface, folded neatly in the pocket of her winter coat, one she hadn't worn in weeks, tucked away like a secret she meant to forget. I only checked because the coat smelled faintly of perfume she didn't wear around me anymore. That kind of small, specific detail tends to catch your attention when you're paying close attention. It was from a downtown bistro. Off-white linen pressed, their logo stamped in soft gray ink. Written on it in her handwriting, unmistakable in its slope and tailing loops, was a sentence. Same time next Friday, J. I stood in the hallway holding it, my fingers numb despite the heat running. That place wasn't just a restaurant. It was our place once. 5 years ago, I'd taken her there to celebrate our offer being accepted on this house. She'd cried into her champagne. We talked about what room would become the nursery. Now it was just handwriting on a napkin. Coordinates in someone else's map. That Friday night, the one the napkin referred to, she told me she was at her sister's. I remembered because she said it was one of those late, wine and vent nights, and she might stay over if it got too late. I'd made dinner for myself, and played board games with our son. We'd drawn pictures and watched cartoons until bedtime. She'd been laughing with someone else over dessert. When she got home the next morning, I asked how her sister was. She said it was emotional. You know how she gets. I wrote that down. The next day, I found something else. A notebook. Leather-bound, unremarkable on the outside. She usually used it for grocery lists and random to-dos. Almost always blank. Except it wasn't anymore. 3 pages in, written in clean lines. Jason doesn't make me feel watched. Just wanted. That sentence didn't just sting. It broke something open. Jason. My best friend since college. Groomsman at our wedding. The one who made the toast about loyalty, love, and having your brother's back. He'd always been around, never too close, never out of reach. He and Emily got along easily. Maybe too easily. But I never once thought, no, That's not true. I had thought it once, 2 years ago, after a barbecue where they'd spent too much time laughing at each other's jokes. But I buried it. Told myself I was paranoid. That I was projecting insecurities. Jason had his own wife, a stable job, a reputation to protect. And I trusted him. That sentence rewrote every moment in hindsight. The way she laughed harder at his jokes. The way she defended him during our arguments about boundaries. The casual physicality they slipped into. A hand on the shoulder. A shared glance across rooms. All of it suddenly reframed. He wasn't just part of our circle. He was part of her secret. I closed the notebook, heart hammering but hands steady. I didn't throw it. Didn't yell. I simply added it to the folder. Metaphorically, for now, in my mind. The napkin, the phrase, the shower schedules, the phone posture, the locked car. Now a name. Jason. It was personal now. Not just betrayal. Not just infidelity. It was treachery with a face I knew. A voice I could mimic. A laugh I used to echo. And that changed everything. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. This was about someone I trusted like family, stepping into the home I built and redrawing the borders without my knowledge. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the living room, lights off, notebook in hand, replaying every memory I could summon where the three of us had shared space. Who looked at who lingered, what I'd ignored, what I'd excused, and beneath the slow-burning fury, I felt something colder, clarity. This wasn't a moment for anger. It was a moment for strategy, because now I knew who I was watching, and what I was planning for. Once I knew his name, everything changed. I didn't need to hack a phone or plant a GPS tracker. I just needed to observe. Jason's habits were familiar. He was the kind of man who thought confidence and charm were camouflage. Maybe they used to be, but not anymore. The next Friday, I took the morning off work, drove into the city, parked 3 blocks from Emily's office. I found a corner cafe with outdoor seating and a clear line of sight to her building's entrance. Bought a coffee I didn't want and waited with a journal open beside me. At 5:02 she walked out. No briefcase. No laptop bag. Not toward her usual parking garage. She turned the other direction. 4 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up at the curb. Passenger door opened before it stopped moving. She got in without looking back. Jason was driving. It wasn't a friendly ride. Not with the way she smiled when she climbed in. Not with the ease of routine in the gesture. Like they'd done it a dozen times before. Maybe more. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I knew where they were going. The bistro, probably. Or somewhere just as rehearsed. She'd say she was working late. Or decompressing with coworkers. I'd get a message around 7, "Don't wait up. Might be a late one." And I'd text back, "No problem. Take your time." Just like I always did. That night, I sat alone at our kitchen table and studied the calendar. Jason's name was in it 4 times over the past 6 weeks. Birthday party. 2 fun uncle playdates. 1 dinner with friends. He'd been woven into our lives with precision, like an invasive vine, smiling through the cracks in the walls. 2 days later, the confirmation came from an unexpected place. Mutual friends over brunch. Not an interrogation, just polite conversation, the kind you pretend to enjoy even when your stomach's hollow. One of them, Rebecca, said it offhand while stirring her coffee. "Emily's been different lately. Talks a lot about alignment now. Says she's finally putting herself first." I didn't react. I just nodded. She said something like, "I stopped asking if it made sense to stay. I started asking if it still fit who I was becoming." They thought it was growth, self-love, an inspiring rebranding. But I knew what it really was. Justification. Not a woman setting herself free. A woman dressing up betrayal and borrowed wisdom. It's easier to walk out when you can frame it as evolution. When you can pretend the man you're hurting is merely a symbol of your old self, your confined self. That way, the guilt doesn't hit as hard. That way, the man becomes a past version of her, someone she can discard without ceremony. That night, she came home humming. Told me Jason had recommended a book on personal boundaries. We had coffee during lunch. I ran into him downtown, she added, like it was incidental. I asked if it was good. She smiled. "It's helping me see how I've been shrinking myself in this house." Then she kissed my cheek and walked upstairs like she hadn't just handed me a line rehearsed in someone else's bed. I sat in the kitchen after she left, staring at the tile floor. It wasn't the betrayal that hit me hardest in that moment. It was the performance. The comfort she felt rehearsing it right in front of me. How little I seemed to matter in the rewriting of her narrative. That's when I knew the spiral wasn't mine anymore. It was hers, and all I had to do was keep my hand steady while everything she thought was secret kept drifting into the light. It wasn't a receipt or a note or a phone call that broke me. It was a drawing. Our son had been quiet that afternoon, not sad, just thoughtful in the way he gets when he's focused. He'd asked for crayons and paper and spent nearly an hour at the kitchen table. I was cleaning up when he tugged my sleeve and held it up proudly. "Picnic," he said. I took it with a smile. At first glance, it looked like any of his usual scenes: blue sky, a sun with lines shooting out in every direction, 3 figures on a green patch of grass. But then I saw the details. Mom was sitting in the middle, smiling. Jason, unmistakable in his glasses and dark hair, was next to her, his hand over hers. I was on the other side, smiling too, but apart, holding a sandwich alone. It wasn't intentional. He didn't know. But he'd drawn what he saw, or what he was being trained to see. And I realized then, I wasn't even part of her fantasy family anymore. I excused myself, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at the reflection in the mirror for a long time. My jaw clenched hard enough that I felt it in my ears. My fists weren't balled in rage. They were steady. Steadier than they should have been. And that terrified me more than if I had broken down. Because I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. That night, while she was texting in bed, face lit by the screen, phone angled away from me, I sat on the couch downstairs and opened a folder on my laptop. I started assembling everything. The dry cleaning receipt, the napkin, photos of the notebook page, a log of her schedules, changes, the new vocabulary, printouts of messages she had left open long enough for me to glimpse. Nothing explicit, but enough. I logged into our shared financial account, quietly rerouted the automatic transfers I'd set up for savings and investments, changed passwords on the accounts that were only in my name, froze my credit. Not because I thought she'd drain anything, but because strategy is made of habits, not assumptions. The next morning, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. We didn't talk about heartbreak. We talked about positioning, custody, assets, quiet exits. I asked him how clean we could make it if I decided not to warn her in advance. He asked if I had evidence. I slid the folder across his desk. He didn't need to ask another question. For the next week, I played my part. We went out for dinner once. She laughed at something on her phone and turned it toward me, forgetting to hide the name at the top of the message chain. Jason. She didn't even notice when I smiled and nodded. At night, I'd lie beside her and listen to her breathing shift as she fell asleep. I didn't reach for her, didn't hold her. I wasn't angry. I was gathering stillness, like the pause before a curtain rises. I knew exactly how I was going to end this. Not with shouting, not with threats, but with facts laid bare. Evidence so calmly presented she'd feel the shame wrap around her like cold steel. I wasn't going to break anything. I was going to expose it, and let it fall apart on its own. 1 week later, I made dinner. Linguine with garlic cream sauce, one of her favorites. A bottle of wine she liked, already breathing on the counter. She came home humming, said something about traffic, kicked off her shoes and complimented the smell from the kitchen. We ate like nothing was broken. I asked about her day. She told me a story from work, something about a misordered package and a coworker's birthday mix-up. I laughed at the right places. She didn't notice how little I blinked, how quiet I'd gone between bites. After the plates were cleared, I handed her a glass of wine, then excused myself and returned with a folder. Brown leather. Slim. I placed it on the table. She glanced at it but didn't touch it. "What's this?" she asked, still smiling. I opened it for her, page by page. The napkin, the receipt, a printed photo of Jason's SUV from the street outside her office, a copy of the notebook page in her handwriting, dates, patterns, annotated observations. Her expressions didn't change at first, but her fingers twitched when she reached the notebook excerpt. Her eyes skimmed too quickly over the printouts. She tried to close the folder, but I slid it back open with one finger. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, voice thin now. "I was going to tell you." I shook my head once. Calm. Controlled. "You already did," I said, watching her. "I heard you that day in the office. He's just a co-parent now. That's when you told me." Her eyes flooded, but I kept my voice level. "I let you speak first," I continued. "Not out of kindness. Out of strategy. I wanted to see how long you'd keep the lie alive while building something behind my back. I know what you and Jason are. I know how long it's been going on. I know what's been said. And I know what's coming." She reached for her wine but didn't drink. Her mouth opened twice before she found words. "I didn't want to hurt you." I leaned forward, finally, just slightly. "You didn't want consequences. That's not the same thing." Tears started to slide down her cheek now. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't know how to stop it." "You didn't try." She looked away then, the way guilty people do, not dramatically, just slightly off-center, as if they're searching for a softer angle of reality. I stood, slow and deliberate. "There's a custody motion ready to file," I said. "I've already secured the accounts. You won't be blindsided, but you won't be in control either. We'll go through this quietly, unless you force something louder." She didn't follow me when I walked out of the room. She didn't speak again, and I didn't wait for her to try, because the truth had been laid out, and there was nothing left worth pretending. 2 weeks after the confrontation, my phone buzzed just after midnight. It was Jason. The name alone made my jaw clench, but I let it ring out. Then it buzzed again, this time with a message. Just a few lines. No punctuation, as if typing it had taken all the nerve he had left. "This wasn't about you, man. It just grew. I'm sorry if it got messy." I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no anger in me anymore, just calculation. I forwarded the message, not to Emily, not to my lawyer, but to someone who deserved it more. Jason's wife. We'd never been particularly close. She and Emily had always hovered in that polite distance range women often adopt when navigating friendship triangles. But she deserved to see the shape of the knife in her back. She responded 2 hours later with one word. "Received." By the end of that week, the fallout began. Jason's wife moved out. I heard through a mutual friend that she wasn't even angry in the end. Just done. Tired. Like me. The divorce papers were filed. Emily didn't contest the custody terms. Maybe it was guilt, maybe exhaustion, or maybe she knew fighting would only make the truth louder. We kept our communication formal. Coordinated pickups and schedules through a shared calendar. There were no long conversations, no rehashing. I gave her dignity in public, but I didn't offer her softness again. Word spread among our friends, as it always does. Some chose her, quietly, without announcements. Others reached out to me with awkward sympathy or stunned silence. A few asked for coffee to hear my side. I declined. I didn't need to narrate it for them. The story was already visible in the aftermath. One friend, my oldest, said it best over a quiet drink. "She built a version of the future where you didn't exist," he said. "You're not wrong for refusing to make space in it." I nodded, said nothing.